Welcome back. Governor Ron DeSantis made the environment a central part of his campaign for governor. Now, in his first week, he has announced a series of environmental policies that are even impressing his Democratic opponents.
I wanted us to be on more of a war footing on this and have a sense of urgency. And so I think that's what today's executive actions really show. Shows a vision, but it also puts meat on the bone. So we're going to be seeking $2.5 billion over the next 4 years for water resource and Everglades-related projects. That represents $1 billion more than the previous 4 years. And so that is something that I think is warranted, and it's something we're going to fight for. We're also going to do things such as, within DEP, make sure that we have a chief science officer. I want them to be talking with people like this so that we have the most up-to-date sound science at our fingertips so that when we're making policy, it's going to be effective policy.
Science, imagine that. The governor also demanded the members of the South Florida Water Management District resign en masse. These have been a dizzying few days on the environmental front. Joining me this morning to discuss it is Eric Eichenberg, CEO of the Everglades Foundation. Eric, thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Jim.
You served also on the transition team on environmental issues for Governor DeSantis. You were at the press conferences when he announced some of these policies. Obviously, you seem to be supportive. Why are these significant steps that the governor has taken?
Well, it's significant, Jim. It's based on the fact it was just 2 days after taking the oath of office. Governor DeSantis outlined a bold vision for the environment. Remember now, 3 out of the last 6 summers, Florida's been suffering from blue-green toxic algae blasting our coastal estuaries, rivers, and waterways. This governor, again, less than 48 hours, outlined comprehensive approaches of how to deal with that issue, let alone working towards getting Everglades projects built within a 4-year time period, not waiting 10, 15, 20 years. This governor is leading. We're proud to support it.
So among the things that he announced, a task force to deal with blue-green algae, look at possible solutions over the next 5 years, immediate design and construction of the reservoir. That's what you were just talking about, south of Lake Okeechobee, that could handle some of those discharges, clean the water, send it south into the Everglades. We talked about the chief science officer being elected. You also talked about creating a department for resiliency. He doesn't like to use the word climate change, but he wants to talk about the effects of climate change in a way.
Well, let's realize, as a science-based organization, the Everglades Foundation was delighted to hear this emphasis on science. And for a governor, a newly elected governor, inaugurated governor, to say that he would like to rely upon science, he wants to rely upon science, that's the future here. That's the way to get this.
Governor Scott did not do that.
Well, listen, science at times was a 4-letter word. It's not the case here. We have scientists across this state that are studying these issues. Let's bring them together, whether it's on these panels, have a chief science officer. We have expertise at the foundation in our own right. We need science to lead this effort. DeSantis wants to do it.
This may sound like a dumb question, but I always feel it's important to ask these. Do you believe that the chief science officer has to, in fact, be a scientist?
Well, I think that detail will be worked out. I think in hearing it yesterday, I think the answer is yes.
Because there was some talk that, maybe he appoints a politician to be the chief science officer to sort of ferry the material. I think that would be taken as a bad thing. If he wants to have a scientist in that position, he should have a scientist in that position.
Listen, the politicians have delivered the problems we have today. Having a scientist be at the table to provide counsel. You have an economic advisor. You don't have a politician who's not an economist giving economic strategy. Have a scientist there. Let's figure these issues out in a comprehensive way. The good news is Governor DeSantis wants to do it.
All right. I mentioned in the introduction that he also called for the resignation of the South Florida Water Management District. I want to play some of that sound. That was from his press conference in Stewart. Let's play that now.
We really needed to have a fresh start at the South Florida Water Management District. And so today I have sent correspondence to all the board members thanking them for their service but requesting their resignations because we do just need a fresh start so that we can move forward together, as Floridians united.
All right. why was this important? In the South Florida Water Management District, the members are selected by all of them were selected by the previous governor in staggered terms, approved by the Senate. Why shouldn't they be allowed to finish their terms?
Well, the public has lost faith in the current makeup of the South Florida Water Management District. I go back to the decision they made in November of last year to extend a lease to Florida Crystals. The land that's needed for this reservoir that we just mentioned a few moments ago, that land was critical. This board voted at the behest of the governor-elect, and a U.S. congressman went to Coral Gables and asked for that to be delayed. They decided to move forward on that with a unanimous vote. The public needs to have faith in this agency. This is a critical agency. This is the partner with the federal government in restoring the Everglades. And we need governing board members. The governor needs people on that board who understand what he's trying to accomplish and will move towards doing it in our lifetime.
I spoke to one of the board members, Brandon Tucker, after the governor's press conference. He said he does not intend to resign. He's still hoping to have a meeting with the governor to try to convince him that his intentions on the board are earnest and good, and that he wants to do what's best for the community. Other board members have also said they don't want to or won't resign. If the board members just say to themselves, we're not resigning, does the governor really have any recourse at that point to remove them?
Well, it's interesting on the gentleman you just referenced. The irony is he would like to speak to the governor about the position. Well, the governor-elect asked that same individual, along with 8 others, to delay the vote on that lease. And they didn't listen to that request. They, in fact, rebuked that request to the point where they made the extension of that lease. The governor was clear yesterday. He wants a fresh start at the South Florida Water Management District. These men need to listen to that ask, and they need to resign.
The governor also earlier in the day, I mean, he actually did a series of stops across the state. Earlier, he also outlined some policies as it relates to opposition to fracking. Is that correct?
Yes.
And talked about offshore oil drilling.
Yes.
Where is he coming down on those issues? And is it? Do you find it surprising that he's taking these positions as boldly as he is?
Well, I'm not surprised. He heard these issues throughout the campaign. Fracking, offshore oil drilling, that's a concern in various communities across this state. For those issues to be included in this executive order, now working with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Florida legislature, the meat on the bone that the governor mentioned yesterday, over the next number of weeks into the months heading towards the legislative session in March, that's where those details need to be ironed out. But the fact that he's drawn the line, that he wants a ban on fracking, he wants to ensure that the drilling does not occur, let alone these other issues that he's outlined, it's a new day, and we're extremely excited.
Eric Eichenberg, I appreciate your time for coming in. I'm sure we'll be following this closely. You know, how soon do you think the reservoir could actually start being built? Because right now there is that lease.
Well, true. And the lease now, the extension says that the sugar company has at least a minimum of 20 months. That lease needs to be reversed. The original date was April 1st of this year. We have a whole number of steps that need to occur to get to the point of constructing that reservoir. Let's get to that point in a few weeks. I hope that we can start moving dirt in 2019.
Again, Eric Eichenberg, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, we'll be right back after the break.